interactive experiences, and presentations throughout the year and beyond. Tonight is just the beginning for all of us. We have worked hard to pull together individuals who can help us jumpstart the conversation as we gain insight into feelings of pain that run deep, long suffering that has been happening in silence, and perspectives that may have never been shared before. I'm so pleased that we had 147 people register to listen to this panel. We are a nation, we as a nation, and we as a community have all been awakened. Now is the time where the real work begins. Now is the time for us to work together, to talk with each other, and have difficult conversations. The reality is that with each of us, some of us will be more uncomfortable than others. It's okay to experience this discomfort. We have to remember that growth overall is uncomfortable and growth can be messy. Growth requires you to break out of your comfort zone. I attended a workshop recently where they said to us, growth happens when you begin to push past built boundaries. If you're not feeling any sense of discomfort during the dialogue, ask yourself, am I fully engaged? Are you giving yourself full permission and taking a risk? We built tonight to ease everyone in by having you listen to the panel. Future sessions we have will involve you taking a risk to be vulnerable and asking you to have a willingness to be open and have honest conversations. I must say, as the mother of 3 African American boys and the wife of an African American man, the past few weeks has been very difficult for me. I can say, and I have said to my friends, that my experiences as a black mom is not the same as my friends who are white. I tell you that I can tell you stories where I have been followed in stores because of the color of my skin, and it hurts. So being transparent with all of you, I am welcoming these discussions and so happy that so many of you are awake and seeing the silent pain that so many of us endure daily. We will hold sessions in the future on white privilege, identity, implicit bias, microaggressions, and inclusive language, just to name a few. As I said earlier, this is just the beginning. It's a marathon, not a race. So tonight we have an amazing panel, and each panelist will be introduced and they will reflect on what all of this means to them. Following the panelists' reflections, our final panelist, Dr. Kelly Moore, will speak to the topic of how to talk with your children about race. This will be followed by some guided panel discussions and questions, and we will address some of the questions that were submitted to us earlier and try to answer some of the questions that may come up in the chat. The response was overwhelming, so I know we will not get through everything. So at this time, I would like to introduce my co-moderator and friend, Katina George. Katina George joined Burlington Township School District in December of 2018. Prior to coming to BT, she was a school counselor in a small school in Ocean County for 15 years, 3 years as a supervisor of counseling services. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology at Rowan University, master's degree in school and community counseling, and director of counseling certification from TC&J, and a master's degree in school leadership from Wilmington University. Katina lives in Delran with her husband and 3 boys, ages 11, 10, and 7. Much of her free time is spent driving them around to practices and sitting in gyms. Katina?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me good? Perfect. Okay. I'm very thankful to be able to be here with you all, taking the first steps in growing, not just professionally, but also personally. When Mrs. Scott and I started talking about having these sessions, 1,000 thoughts ran through my head. But what stuck out the most to me is my thoughts as a mom. Like Liz said, I have 3 boys. Eddie is 11, Jeremy is 10, and Nico is 7. I want to continue to teach my kids to be kind, empathetic, generous, and accepting of everyone. And in light of what is going on around the country, I'm going to learn how to be more of an ally. I want to help those around me be better allies and stand up for what is right and what is just. Like many of you, I struggle with the right words to say when I talk to my own kids. But I know that's okay because this is not easy. It's not easy to have these conversations. It's not easy to look at their eyes and asking all these questions that they're asking. And I may not have the right words or any answers, but that's also why I'm here. I understand that I have a different kind of conversation with my kids than parents of Black children have with their kids. And to be honest with you, Liz and I have talked about this before, it truly hurts my heart. I want to see that change because it's not right that we have to have different kinds of conversations. I want to be a better support person for our students and my new friends at Burlington Township. I started here about 1.5 years ago, and I honestly really love the diversity of this community, and I hope to grow with you all. So thank you so much for having me. Okay, so it's important that we hear from our students first. We're very, very, very proud of these young ladies. Our first panelist is Maya Dusenberry. Maya is now officially an alumni who was born and raised in Burlington Township. She is one of the organizers and planners of a recent Black Lives Matter protest held in Burlington Township. Maya helped to plan this protest because she wanted to spark a conversation in our community. She believes that the protest organizers and all of the protesters want to be a part of the change. She's very passionate about this topic and does not want to live in a world where a person's race determines if that person gets treated equally. Maya was recently named as Burlington County Woman of the Week, which is awesome. Congratulations. So go ahead, Maya, you can speak.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I know me and my friends, we personally planned the protest because we just felt like there wasn't something going around us in our town. We wanted to start the conversation here. Also, kids our age are very passionate about this, but they just don't know where to put their passionate, or they're ignorant to what things are going on. So we really wanted to do this thing to educate them just so they have knowledge, because knowledge is power. So
Thank you so much. So our second panelist is Jasmia. Are we able to hear Jasmia? Not yet?
no.
All right, so we'll hold on. Hopefully we'll get Jasmia on, but I have to tell everyone, Jasmia was also named Burlington County Woman of the Week. Jasmia is a 16-year-old Burlington Township student. Ever since 6th grade, she has always wanted to learn more about Black history. There are a lot of things that she has taught herself over the years because she simply felt that the school district didn't teach enough Black history. When Trayvon Martin was murdered, she started to notice injustice in the United States. When she found out about the killing of George Floyd, she knew she had to do something other than just post on social media. She, along with the help of her two friends that you're meeting tonight, decided to start the protest. She saw that there was not a protest in the town, and she created one. She really hopes to educate people and influence people to fight what they believe in. Her next goal is to make change in our nation and end all racism for upcoming generations. So Jasmia, thank you. We hope to be able to hear directly from you. Katina? We can't hear you, Katina.
What happens when I mute myself?
Yep.
Okay, so our next panelist is 16-year-old Jayla Washington. She's a Burlington Township High School student. Being a military child, she lived in many different states before moving to New Jersey. She's the second oldest of 4 children and says that it is important for her to create a better world for her younger sisters. As an African-American woman, she thought it was important to speak out about the injustices committed all across our country. She is one of the organizers of a Black Lives Matter protest in our town. She is dedicated to creating change in any way that she can. It's most important for her to educate the youth about injustices in America and to figure out how to fix them completely. Thank you, Jayla, for being part of this.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, basically, I'm just really proud of all of us for being here and sparking this conversation, first of all, because it's super important. is super important for our future in America. And just America being a melting pot, it's very important that every race, every ethnicity, it's America is supposed to be diverse and everybody should be able to live here free and equally and not be discriminated against. And that's our goal, to just help create change in the future.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Lieutenant James Sullivan from the BTPD, and he's also a BT grad from the class of 97. He has been with the Burlington Township and lieutenant with the Burlington Township Police Department, having served since 2002. Currently, the Administrative Division Commander with responsibility for the agency's internal affairs, training, accreditation, community engagement, and public information functions. Currently pursuing a dual JD MBA degree from Rutgers Law School, Camden, and Rutgers School of Business, Camden. Joining the Eagleton Institute of Politics as a graduate fellow for the 2021 academic year, graduate of the NJSACOP Command and Leadership Academy, as well as the NJ Certified Public Manager Program. He currently is a faculty member for both programs and has taught over 1,000 public sector executives, middle management, and frontline supervisors from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland on leadership theory, performance appraisal, risk management, ethical decision-making, and strategic planning since 2013. He conducts the on-site assessments of police agencies nationwide as a certified assessor with the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. And he's the past president of the Internal Affairs Association of Burlington County and current executive board member for the New Jersey Public Safety Accreditation Coalition. Lieutenant?
Thank you, Liz. I want to thank the school district. I want to thank you. I want to thank all the fellow panelists for inviting me to speak tonight. And I especially want to commend the three young ladies, not only for the courage that they displayed, for being able to put those two protests together earlier this month, but also the talent to actually execute it and get it done. So as I kind of sat here over the last several days thinking about what I was going to say this evening, I kind of brought myself back to just the feelings and the thoughts that I had when I first watched the video of George Floyd's death at the hands of 4 officers out in Minneapolis. And really 3 feelings or thoughts came to mind. And I think that they're feelings and thoughts that are shared by many others in law enforcement. First being sadness, second being a sense of bewilderment, and then the last being truly a sense of anger. Felt sad for George Floyd, felt sad for his family, for his friends, for his loved ones, sad for the folks that had to stand on that sidewalk that day and watch his life stolen from him right before their very eyes, despite begging the officers to simply roll him over and allow him to breathe. Sadness for the entire Minneapolis community, and sadness for every other person across this nation for whom that video is not just a distant abnormality, but really a rather all too painful reminder of injustice and brutality that still exists in 2020. The bewilderment was at the officers' failure to simply recognize, or even worse yet, their display of indifference towards the distress that George was experiencing. The bewilderment at the need to put a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, despite the fact that there were several other officers there to help him, and despite the fact that he wasn't acting violently toward them, and really bewilderment that they made no attempts to revive or give aid to him, despite the fact that it was quite apparent that he was motionless and lifeless for several minutes. And I'll wrap up with the anger. And it is genuine anger that any person wearing a uniform similar to mine would display such a brutal indifference to another human life. Anger that the officer's actions flew in the face of all that is honorable that I've come to know in law enforcement. Anger that their actions would undercut all the good work that the men and women, at least of my agency and many others across the nation, do every single day to protect and serve their communities. And anger that their actions would once again revive those fears amongst members of our communities that their loved ones might not be safe in the hands of a police officer, To be clear, I'm proud to wear the uniform I wear. I'm proud of my agency. I'm proud of the values that we respect. I'm proud of the men and women we have working for us on a daily basis who work towards the common goal of serving and improving our community. What those officers did was not honorable law enforcement. It was criminal. That's simple. So such lack of humanity has no place in society in general, certainly not in the entity that's duty bound to be its guardian. I'm additionally saddened by the additional violence that I've witnessed over the last several weeks, and truthfully ashamed that it was precipitated by the callous actions of somebody wearing a uniform similar to mine. On behalf of law enforcement, on behalf of the good men and women of law enforcement, I genuinely believe and commit that we're going to do better, not just in words, but in deed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Burlington Township School District, I have to say, is very unique in the partnerships that we have. The relationship that we have with the police department is second to none. And there are other districts that don't enjoy the relationships that we have with the police department and the relationships that we've built. In addition to that, about 15 years ago, we came together as a district and decided that it was important for many of us to sit around the table and have conversations with each other, because it takes a village to do what we do day in and day out. So we created something called our faith-based roundtable. And sitting at this table are many members of our faith-based community from all different faiths, the police department, our Burlington Township Food Pantry, the health department. We all come together 3 times a year to discuss issues that are going on. And in times of crises, we've been able to call on our partners to help us deal with a lot of different issues. So I'm pleased to see what we're doing here tonight, and our next 2 panelists are a part of that. It's my pleasure now to introduce Matt Baldwin. Matt Baldwin considers himself a true Burlington boy because he was born and raised here. He serves the community as a police chaplain for the BTPD, working with those in crises and in their deepest time of need. He is also a student ministries pastor at the Fountain of Life Center. His passion is to see young people make a difference in this world and become all that they aspire to be. Matt is a friend of our schools and has positively impacted so many young people in our town. Matt?
Well, thanks again for asking me to be a part of this panel and this conversation. It's always a pleasure to share the platform with so many amazing people and just be with the people of Burlington. I love Burlington. I love Burlington City, Burlington Township. Everything about Burlington is who I am. Like I said, I'm a local boy. I'm a local youth minister, and my goal is really just to spread love, because there's a whole lot of hate in this world, and people need to realize the power that love has. Not only love for your fellow man, but love for God, and love for your religion, love for whatever you're passionate about. Like, let's stop spreading hate, start spreading love, and watch what happens when you do that. I mean, love is contagious, and for me, that's like my guiding life principle. I want everything I do to be earmarked with love. When I die, I just want people to say one thing: he just loved people. And so for me, to be a part of this conversation is an honor. I don't know. For me, being here, I'm listening, I'm learning. But as much as I'm able to, I will divulge what I've come to know is true, is that life is better when you love people. And that's really it.
Thank you, Matt. Our next panelist is Dorian Morgan, Esquire. He's a 1988 Burlington Township High School graduate that grew up and went through Burlington Township School System. Dorian graduated from the Trenton State College, which is now known as the College of New Jersey, with a Bachelor of Science degree in Law and Justice. Dorian attended the Philadelphia Institute and received a certificate in paralegal studies in 1994, and then joined the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office as a prosecutor's agent in the Victim Witness Unit until 1998. In the fall of '97, Dorian fulfilled a lifelong dream and entered Rutgers University Camden School of Law. and he graduated in 2001 with a Juris Doctorate degree. Dorian was admitted to the New Jersey Bar in March of 2002. After doing a year of clerkship with the Honorable Thomas Smith in Burlington County Superior Court Criminal Division, he opened up his own law office in Burlington City in September of 2002. He continues as a solo practitioner in the law office of Dorian B. Morgan, specializing in criminal, juvenile, Dyfus Municipal Court, landlord-tenant, and real estate matters. Dorian Morgan is well known and respected as an attorney who cares. Dorian is also the founder and pastor of Restoration Station Christian Fellowship in Edgewater Park, New Jersey. The church celebrated their 16 years of ministry and community outreach in February. Thank you, Dorian, for joining us today.
Thank you, Katina and Liz, so much for having me on this panel. This is just such a very important topic. I come at it from so many different areas. Obviously, being a Black man myself, that's where I started. And that's just part of my life, no matter what other hat I wear. But then I've always been interested in law enforcement and law and justice. And so I've worked with the prosecutor's office of Burlington County. Then I became a defense attorney. I then became a pastor of the church, and I became a chaplain with the Burlington Township Police Department. So I've worked on, if you will, both sides of the fence. I've worked with police. I've worked, I guess, adversarial to police at times. But in all that I do, I've been called, I believe, to be an advocate of the people, working with our community, trying to make it a better, safer, more productive place for all of us. And in that, if I put on my pastor's hat for a moment, I know I've been called to have what I call the ministry of reconciliation. Those who know the Bible, it's 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 18 and 19 tells us that Jesus reconciled us to God, not holding our sins against us, but reconciling us to him anyway. And now he has given us the same ministry of reconciliation. So therefore, I can't hold other people's wrongs against them. It's my job to do everything I can to bring us together in unity. The Bible says that blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called the sons of God. Blessed are the merciful, because we will receive mercy. There'll be times I know that I need mercy, so I'm going to continue to give it as much as possible, so that when my day comes, someone will be there to give me some mercy too. This conversation, again, I've been on many of these panels over the last, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks, and I don't mind. Every time I get a call saying, "Would you be a part?" I say yes, because as Liz mentioned, this is not it's not a sprint. It's not a quick thing. It's a marathon. This is something that's going to be taking place. It's a process over years and years and generations, in fact. But with every conversation, one, you must have willing participants, no matter how difficult the subject matter. Many of us come into situations where we just don't want to talk about it. If you're married, you understand. There's some conversations you just want to stay away from. However, to get through it, you have to have willing participants, not only to speak open and honestly, but be willing to listen with an open mind, an open heart, be willing to empathize with the other person's backgrounds, experiences, and feelings. So as we go into this conversation, it can't just be about me or me, as you talk. For us to move forward, it has to be about us. And it can't even be about us against them, whoever them are or they are. But it has to be about us, all of us, with and for us. And that's why I want to be a part of this conversation and any others that move forward, bringing our communities, in fact, our country together, so that we can truly be one nation under God, indivisible, but with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorian. So our next panelist, who is also our keynote for tonight, is Dr. Kelly Moore. She will be sharing her reflections with us, and then following her reflections, she's going to talk a little bit about how, as a parent, a guardian, how to talk with your children about race. With everything that's been going on, there is no way to hide from this conversation. So Dr. Moore will be getting into that. She has been working with our district for quite some time now, helping us with QPR training, which helps us, and she's been also training our faith-based partners and our police department on recognizing suicide ideation and how to have conversations to help people. So she, along with her partner Shanique from Rutgers, they have really become members of our Burlington Township family. Kelly is a clinical psychologist licensed in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and as a practitioner, her clinical expertise is in the treatment of trauma and anxiety disorders in children and adolescents, with a specialty in the treatment of PTSD and OCD. Additionally, she has worked in efforts to disseminate evidence-based treatments and develop trauma-focused programs in community mental health in Philadelphia and New Jersey. Her work has focused on identifying facilitators and overcoming barriers to implementation of evidence-informed practice and implementing trauma-informed care with multidisciplinary teams. She is currently the principal investigator and program manager for the Children's Center for Resilience and Trauma Recovery, a SAMHSA-funded Category 3 center under the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And this is the program that she's been working with us through a grant. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology from Rutgers University and completed her pre-doctoral psychology internship at Rutgers UPHC's Child Therapeutic Day School and Office of Prevention Research. Following completion of her doctorate, Dr. Moore completed a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania at the Center for the Treatment and Study of Anxiety. Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Liz and Katina. Can you all hear me okay?
Good.
Yes.
Cross my fingers that continues. Good evening, everyone. I'm so honored to be asked to be on this amazing panel tonight. I'm going to say a few things and get out of the way because I really am anxious to hear more from our students and all of our panelists. So why am I here? So partially because I can't say no to Katina and Liz anytime they ask me to do anything. I'm also a community member. I reside in Burlington Township. I'm raising my family here. Also, I have lived experience. So as you can see, I'm a Black woman. I'm a descendant of slaves, and I'm proud of the legacy of my ancestors, and that's part of why I'm here. I'm also here because I'm married to a Black man, and I'm raising 3 Black sons. My oldest is 12. He attends the middle school. I have a rising 3rd grader that's headed to Fountain Woods, and I have a 3-year-old who will be entering the district very soon. So I have a lot at stake to be a part of a conversation like this and to do my part. But obviously, as Liz said, I'm also dedicated in my profession to helping people understand how to interact with other people and how to support people through some of their most difficult times. And I would say right now, we as a country are in a very difficult time. So I'm going to go ahead and move into what Liz mentioned about how you can talk to your children about race. I think first I want to ask everybody to take a moment and take a kind of a deep breath because this is a tough conversation. Talking about race can be very uncomfortable. It's a difficult thing for some, and for some people, it's something that they've been talking about, but still brings up a lot of emotion. But my guess is that all of us that are on this call tonight are here because this means something to us. The degree to which may be different, but this all matters to us. And I want you to know that even in spite of your discomfort with talking about it, I want you to stay committed to having the talk and having these conversations with your family. Because if it feels uncomfortable, that means it's working. That means you're doing the work. So don't run away from it. Don't let that deter you from having tough conversations. That's number one. So I'll start there. As far as talking to your kids about race, sometimes I'll hear parents, particularly parents that I work with that are not Black or brown, talk about raising their children to be colorblind or to not see color. And I think that they say that with a lot of pride, and their intentions are very good in saying that. But I want to say to you that the impact of that lands a certain way with people of color when they hear that. And I'll just explain why. So when you're teaching your children to, quote, not see color, that's almost teaching them to not see certain aspects of other people that are really relevant to their experience. So it means that a big part of how I identify myself and how my children identify themselves as Black people and the culture that comes with that is invisible. And in a town like ours, in Burlington Township or whatever town you're calling from, there's probably some diversity. And so we don't want to move to the narrative that we're not supposed to see those things. Instead, I think we should understand that, yes, we're all humans. And yes, we teach our children to show respect for everyone, but setting them up to see the world as colorblind is unrealistic because of the country that we're in, which still is really wrecked with discrimination and systemic racism and prejudice. And so by raising our children to not see these things, then they're going to be less likely to notice when they need to support their friends of color as they get older. So they'll have this blind spot, and that's what we don't want. But I understand the sentiment behind that, but I would just caution you to rethink that instead of teaching my children not to see color, that I teach my children to be an upstander and to recognize that certain people get treated differently because of certain things about them, and that it's unfair. And when you see that, you should speak up, which kind of brings me to my next point about raising children to be anti-racist. So it's not enough to say I'm not racist, because that's what a lot of people say. And they truly do believe that. But let's take it a step further and say, how am I raising my children to be anti-racist? It's the same thing you're doing when you teach your children how to not stand by while someone gets bullied. Some of those concepts are very much the same, but on a much broader scale. So focusing on raising children that are anti-racist means that you're teaching them to be aware of our nation's ugly history with racism and prejudice and discrimination, and giving them the tools to be able to stand up when those issues sprout up. So you're giving them the bravery to support their peers. So with your older children, there's lots of resources that you can find online. These are really, I always say, Googleable resources that you can find. If you have a middle schooler, there's books you can share with them, movies and shows you can watch. You know, teaching our children about race isn't just a conversation. Yes, we do have conversations with our children, but it's also by what you do. So look at your actions. You know, go in your children's rooms. How many books do you buy them that represent children of color as the protagonist? You can buy board books for your children as they're infants that have a vast differences in terms of who are the main characters. What movies and shows do you watch that amplify the stories and voices of Black and Brown people? That's another area where you can talk to your children about race. And if you have older children, ask them what they already have heard or know about even the most recent event. So the murder of George Floyd, many children that are in middle school and high school that have phones, they might have already seen it. And so it's important that you as a parent have conversations with your children and ask them what they saw, what they're thinking about. That shows them that you're open to having the conversation. And this is, you know, even as white parents, if you feel like you don't have the words to say, that's okay. Just having the conversation and starting and saying that you're open to talking about it, that's one way to start that conversation. And get yourself informed. You know, there's lots of resources. There's a racial equity toolkit online. You just click racial equity tools. There's tons of information on there for parents and children. You go by the age of your child. So don't avoid the conversation, because a lot of times kids are already aware of these things, especially if they've moved into the age where they have their own devices. They're going to be seeing and hearing a lot. Sometimes those things are unavoidable. They're on the recommended list on YouTube. So try not to shy away from that. And then the last thing I'll say is get informed. Understand that the way that we've been teaching history in our country is sort of part of the problem. And I'll just share with you that I recently bought a book recommended to me for my middle schooler. He's reading a book called Stamped by Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kendi. And you've probably been hearing about Ibram Kendi a lot with his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. But Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kendi came together and wrote this book called Stamped. And it's really about the history of America that includes the story of slavery. And as my son was reading it, when I asked him, what he thought about it. And one of the things he said is that when he's at school, they learn about Columbus in 1492, a little bit about the Revolutionary War, and then it jumps to 18 something, the end of the 1800s. And he said, reading this book, I feel like there's a bunch of stuff that gets left out and I don't really understand. And it's a huge segment of history that gets wiped out. And so it's important that we talk about the things that have happened and be open to it, because if we don't, we will just continue to repeat the trauma of racism in our country and we will never heal from it. So it's imperative to us to have these conversations with us, with our children and with each other, if we really want to truly dismantle racism. So those are just some ideas. There's a bunch, but I just wanted to be brief and move on to our questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moore. And again, if you have any questions, just a reminder to our participants that you can type them in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being open and honest and just being transparent and reflecting on why you're here and what this means to you. So I want to delve into a couple questions just to generate some conversations between our panelists. And the first question is, what does Black Lives mean to you? And the other piece that goes along with that is the All Lives Matter, which has been a major debate. So whoever wants to speak to Black Lives Matter, please feel free.
If no one's jumping in, I'll jump in. For me, Black Lives Matter is becoming just that. It's a very specific. Black lives do matter, and it's a statement that needs to be recognized. Now, I used to. In fact, it's funny. I'm so glad to see these young ladies who scheduled the rally and protest march in Burlington Township, because it was at that rally that I spoke to some young men. Prior to that, I was one of the All Lives Matter crowd. I thought that Black Lives Matter separated us out, and we should be a part of the grander whole. However, some of the young men pulled me aside and said, well, until Black Lives Matter, all lives can't matter. Their argument was sound in that if we keep saying all lives matter, it's easy to leave out some. And right now, unfortunately, it's Black lives that are under attack. Another gentleman started to tell me a story about if you call the fire department because your house is on fire, you don't want all your neighbors to come running out saying, well, all our houses matter. Well, yeah, I understand all of our houses matter, but right now it's my house that's on fire. So my house matters. So yeah, Black Lives Matter to me really just points out that we are under attack as Black lives. And until the entire world realizes that Black lives matter, then all lives cannot matter.
Great.
Thank you, Dorian. Anyone else?
Yeah. I really believe that, like for me personally, I had to understand Black Lives Matter a little deeper. Like Dorian said, I don't know if I was necessarily an All Lives Matter person, but I just never really understood the importance of the slogan until really this George Floyd issue took flight. And I really believe that the Black Lives Matter, it really needs to be viewed more as an intrinsic ethical and moral value rather than simply a movement or a hashtag. It's deeper than a protest. It's deeper than a social media post. And you don't want to make it and just kind of relinquish it to being a trite, common place motto. It's a profound statement that when rendered by someone, especially a white person saying Black Lives Matter, it should signal that, right, their values are aligned with the greater good of all people and the equality of all mankind. However, I do believe that the saying Black Lives Matter has been kind of hijacked by more political motives, if that makes sense. And I think that its palatability, right, especially to white people like myself, could be better understood and accepted if it would jettison its alliance with certain political agendas. And for me, I don't really affiliate at all with politics, whether liberal or conservative. So for me, I would think that if you want to disarm people and help them truly see and understand, you kind of need to remove any distractions and non-essential stimulus from the conversation. So when saying Black Lives Matter, getting someone to be able to, like, especially a white person again, getting someone like myself to say that is a big deal. And getting them to understand that is even greater. But expecting them to maybe switch their adherence to a different, political party is really kind of disingenuous, if that makes sense. So I think that, again, that saying Black Lives Matter is a big deal, and Black lives do matter. And I think that if Black people can talk to white people about the Black Lives Matter motto, meaning, hey, I'm not looking for you to switch sides politically, going from conservative to liberal, and just saying, hey, look, I'm looking for you to see me as a human being. Again, seeing it as an ethical and moral intrinsic value to a person, and recognizing them, like Dr. Kelly said, not being colorblind, not just throwing that around like, oh, I don't really see color. But no, when I sit down next to my good friend Dorian Morgan, I see a Black man, but I also see a Black minister. I see my friend. I also see someone who I would call a hero of mine. So seeing him, seeing his Blackness, seeing his skin color, that's a big deal. So I think just helping disarm white people in that conversation is a big deal. So don't try to just relinquish it to getting them to switch political affiliations or ideology. Don't do that. Just help them see you as a normal human being. Help them see your Blackness as something beautiful and something for you and them to both embrace.
Thank you, Matt.
Liz, I was just going to say, one of the things when I think of the Black Lives Matter movement is that it's a political issue, but it's also a sentiment. And so when I hear Black Lives Matter, my frame of reference is that until these things happen, Black Lives Matter. X happens, Black Lives Matter. Some people hear it and they imply the word only Black Lives Matter. And that's what gets them so upset, right? They hear only Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. So that's not fair, right? And so the all lives matter arguments that I've heard is because they hear the only that's implied as opposed to until these things happen, Black Lives Matter, and we need to focus our efforts on what needs to be done to support our Black brothers and sisters as they fight against these systemic issues, right? And we'll support that and we'll stand up for that. We'll go forward, that kind of thing. So I think it's, if you are one of those people that are offended by the term Black Lives Matter, I think that maybe think about it over the next couple of days in that way. Think about it as a sentiment of why are people saying Black Lives Matter? Where did all that start? And understanding that the implied statement that goes before it is until certain things happen and until certain things are changed in our nation, clearly Black Lives Matter, and we have to do what we need to do. It's understood that all lives matter, but I think, again, it's your frame of reference. So I would just encourage people to really challenge themselves on that, because there's the political aspect of it, which is there, but more than that, it's a sentiment, and I think it's an understanding that Black Lives Matter is about us dismantling the systemic forces that have been literally stitched into the fabric of our country. Until these things become challenged and dismantled, we have to keep fighting the fight.
Can I pick up there? So I want to kind of echo the comments of both, or excuse me, all three, Dr. Moore and Matt and Dorian, is that, I don't think saying that Black Lives Matter does not mean that others don't matter, right? It's not a statement of exclusivity. It's not a statement necessarily of being adversarial. And you're right. There's that common refrain when someone says Black Lives Matter. There's a common refrain of, well, oh yeah, all lives matter, and particular to my profession, you also get the, well, blue lives matter, and undeniably they do, right? And that's they do. But I think saying that as a response or as a rebuttal really takes the focus away from the people who need it most. Even if the person saying it is attempting to convey a sense of unity or equal footing, I think it really does take it away from the people that need it most. The fact is, right now, statistics and a lot of anecdotal evidence suggest that there are still institutions in 2020 in the United States of America, institutions and systems that act as if Black lives don't matter. I heard a statistic the other day from Brian Stevenson. I was watching one of his talks, and he's a director of the Equal Justice Initiative, and he's also the author of what I think is a phenomenal book, Just Mercy. And he said 1 in 3 Black male children born in the United States is expected to go to jail or prison. And that is absolutely alarming to me. And I think it indicates that the criminal justice system in its entirety needs some serious attention. So again, it's not a matter of Black Lives Matter only. It's not a matter of Black Lives Matter, I think, above all others. But let's face it. I think I don't recall if it was Dorian or Matt that made the comment of, if somebody's drowning, right, and someone needs assistance, and everybody shows up and says all lives matter, you're not the one in the middle of the lake that's drowning right now. That person is, and that person's life matters. So I think that, for at least for me, kind of gives it that context of what it means.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of that because I've heard the sayings, all lives matter and blue lives matter, but all lives matter is only trending when Black Lives Matter is trending. It's like a rebuttal, a protest to my protest, And what we're all fighting for is all lives mattering. We want all lives to matter. That's exactly why we're fighting for Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Jayla. Anyone else? Okay. So the next question is for Lieutenant Sullivan. And what is the response of the police department in light of what is happening? And the next part of that question is a double question again. What support do you need? And what support can the police department give in order to address what we're seeing?
Thank you, Liz. So let me try to take those in order. And so the first one I think is what are we as a Burlington Township Police Department doing in light of what's happening? And before I discuss kind of what we're looking to do moving forward, is I think it's important to talk about where we as a department are today. It's not necessarily us, patting ourselves on our collective backs, but it kind of gives you a sense of a foundation that we intend to launch forward from. So we as an agency, we believe that our greatest asset to our community is the people, are the people. I'm not sure if my subject and verb agreed there. But I don't, you education folks will know better. But at the end of the day, we're really only as good as the decisions that they make, right? It's the men and women wearing our uniforms out in the streets making decisions, and that's a service that we offer to our community. So we invest heavily in them. We as an agency, we went all in on community engagement years ago. And our focus on community engagement has really only increased under the leadership of our current director, Bruce Painter. And again, we look to build our people. We really look to provide the best people we can to our community in 4 ways. Number 1 is recruit the best that we can. Number 2 is train them as well as we possibly can. Number 3 is give them the best policy and procedures manuals that we can. And then the last one is supervise them well, right? So from a recruitment perspective, we want to recruit employees that are reflective of the community that we serve. We're a little hamstrung by the civil service regulations with how our hiring process may go. But nonetheless, we again attempt to recruit the best that we possibly can, do thorough backgrounds on them, and really vet them for what we see to be not only their capabilities, but also what their character is. And that's how we assess our decisions as to whether we're going to hire or not. Training, we as an agency, if there's a penny left in our training budget at the end of the year, we'll spend it. Right? We'll spend it on something because, again, we believe in investing in them. We give them training, not just discretionary training, but also field training, even though it's interesting. You hear the state attorney general discussing recently a lot of his initiatives under the Excellence in Policing initiative that he launched back in December of last year. And they're all very good things that seek to address professionalism, accountability, and transparency. And we are very fortunate in the fact that a lot of what he is advocating for right now is what we have, as an agency, have been doing for years. Having an extensive field training program for our employees, going above and beyond on an annual basis with the in-service training that we provide as far as use of force, high liability areas. Additionally, training every one of our new officers in crisis intervention, which is not something that every officer in the state of New Jersey gets, but we believe in it heavily because we believe it allows them to be able to de-escalate situations without having to resort to force. And the next piece being policy. So again, a lot of things that he's discussing right now, as far as neck restraints being prohibited, the use of force, I guess matrix, if you will, that officers can apply in certain situations. We have as an agency regarded neck restraints through training and practice as being deadly force and should not be applied unless that would be authorized. And again, going above and beyond what's required as far as the use of force. We have multi-level review for every single citizen complaint that comes in. We have multi-level review for every single use of force application that our officers exercise out on the streets. It goes to a frontline supervisor, it goes to internal affairs, and it always lands on the director's desk for his final review. So again, just kind of demonstrating the commitment that we have. And then finally is the supervision. And, we kind of recognize our frontline supervisors, our sergeants, as being the engine that makes the machine go. And they are the ones that really embed and reinforce within the new officers how we conduct business here. Integrity, service, and respect are not just words that we stamp on our letterhead. There are values that we believe in, we subscribe to, we commit to, and we embed and reinforce throughout the entirety of an officer's career. So kind of, going forward, we have as an agency since the beginning of this month, as Dorian and Matt and you, Liz, as well, know very well, is we've sat down and had these really these contemplative conversations, these uncomfortable conversations internally to discuss a lot of what we're seeing out there, so that everybody kind of has everybody has the opportunity to speak their piece and really kind of process everything and wrap their heads around it. Additionally, participating with this panel tonight as an agency, as well as looking to move forward some continued engagement. We're limited right now, unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 situation. It's really been difficult for us as an agency to not be as out and about and shaking hands and seeing people and really engaging with the community. So we're gonna have to do some sort of virtual platform like this. And we really ask, if there's concerns, if there's ideas, if there's suggestions, if there's feedback, if there's just a thought that passes through someone's mind in the middle of the night and they want to share it with the police department, we ask as sincerely as possible, share it with us. If you go to our website, you'll see right on the banner, there's a feedback form. click on it, submit it, stay anonymous if you so desire. As we move forward with our community engagement pieces moving forward, come out, whether it be virtual or in person, please engage with us. You know, we like to say a lot of times we know what we do well, but most folks don't know what they don't do well, right? It's hard to be kind of self-reflective and have that introspection. We want our community to tell us what you think we don't do well. What you think we do not do well. You know, we're just really going all in on that engagement piece. Again, it's not catchphrase. It's what we actually genuinely believe in.
Thank you. Kelly, you have something from Jasmia?
I do. So everyone, Jasmia is one of our students that isn't able to get on the call. And I think one of our other students, her computer just died. So the technology is the technology. Jasmia shared with me something, and I want to just read it. I'm just going to read it how she sent it to me. She said, Black Lives Matter to me means exactly what the statement says, Black Lives Matter. There are innocent Black lives being lost to the hands of the system. Of course, other people's lives matter, but from recent police brutality cases, it's clear that racism in the government hasn't ended. All lives can't matter if Black lives do not matter to our government. People coming together to fight for this movement, no matter what color or ethnicity they are, shows that Black Lives Matter isn't a prejudiced statement. It just explains how the care of Black people in the United States in slavery has been morally wrong, and that the protection of Black bodies needs to be empathized. Wonderful.
Thank you
So that's
so much.
Jasmia.
Thank you. So I'm going to flip that question for the rest of the panelists to ask you, what is it that you want from the police? And how can you support them in their efforts, and what support do you need from them?
Well, this is an interesting one because not often do you get to kind of ask upwards to the police on like what you'd like to see. We're blessed here in Burlington Township to have a great PD who does listen, who does model what they say, and to have a police department who has impeccable record as well. We don't have to go digging to see, some heinous act from a police officer or something like that. The narrative doesn't exist here. So we're blessed in that essence. What I would like to see from the police department is just to continue the ongoing authoritative measures, right? To make sure that if this should ever, God forbid, happen, an issue that is racially escalated, that it's handled, number one, appropriately. It's handled transparently so that the community knows exactly what went down, and then what actions are truly being taken to rectify it. And then also to remain outspoken, not against other departments, but when there is wrong in other departments, let the community that you police know that their PD, right, is taking a stand against whatever wrong was done in another community. It's reassuring to the people, and it's reassuring to the community at large to know that, hey, their police department is not adhering to this quote unquote invisible blue code that we all know has been, it's been there, right? It's just a thing, right? The police brotherhood is a real deal, and it understandably so. You have to trust your department. You have to trust the officer who's working alongside of you to protect you at all times. But in that essence, making sure that blue code is dismantled in some ways, because there's unhealthy habits, there's unhealthy language that's around that, there's unhealthy practice that comes from that blue code. The blue code should be a very simple one. The blue code should be just to honor their community in the best way they can, right? To protect and to serve. That's the police's motto. And we want to make sure that we have confidence in you guys, especially LT, just talking to you this way. I haven't had this conversation with you yet, but the ability for just normal, everyday citizens to provide feedback is a great thing. But a lot of people don't know that. So that's actually the first time that I heard, and I'm a police chaplain, that I heard that there's this tool available to our community. And like you said, you can remain anonymous. So if you're listening to this call, use it. Use that tool, right? BTPD has put that in place for you guys. So, just again, going upwards, LT, just continue to take all measures to remain impeccable in your service to Burlington.
I'm going to jump in real quickly. Also, I do agree with Matt in that obviously with all police departments, you must be transparent. I think much of what has happened over in this country is often these situations will come up, and the police, and I understand in their investigations, have to somewhat, go into their huddle or hate to call it into their cave, but the world is standing outside waiting to hear something, know something, see something, and very often they're not hearing anything. As much as or as little as someone shoplifts, and I don't want to call shoplifting little, but as small as a shoplift, you see it an immediate arrest. However, in a situation where someone is dead, it takes a week. In the Marbury case, months. In some other cases, it's been years, and there's still been no arrest. And often the community is saying, well, why is nothing happening? And the police are saying, well, it's either an open investigation and we can't tell you, or it's a closed investigation that we think nothing really happened and we won't tell you. So I think the transparency is an issue. I'm glad that Burlington Township, and I say this openly, I say this publicly, and I say this often. I deal as an attorney with police departments throughout the entire state of New Jersey, from the top to the bottom. And Burlington Township Police Department is in my estimation, by far one of the best police departments in our entire state. So my hat's off to you in the way you do things. However, the next step with transparency is also having some civilian input. I know that gets a little touchy with a lot of police departments in some of these reviews. Having someone on the review board that's not quote unquote part of the blue code to say, listen, okay, I'm looking at this, and as a police officer, you're going to see it one way because it's just natural from your training, from your experiences and your relationships. I see it this way, but someone who is not from that same blue code might have some input to say, okay, fine, maybe this was done according to standard operating procedure. But now we have an opportunity to say, maybe that standard operating procedure might want to be changed or modified. Because although, as I just heard in one case, it was lawful, but it was awful. And we want to get to a place where our police are not being seen as being awful, but just doing what they have to do to uphold and protect the law. So my thing is, I would love to see police departments more transparent and also open to maybe having some civilian input on the review board.
So I'm going to jump in because we have a couple of questions that have popped up that I believe Lieutenant can speak to. And it seems to be a common thread. We've seen this question pop up a couple of times. What should parents teach their children when dealing with the police is one piece of it. And then the second part of the question is, how can bystanders stand up to the police when they witness poor behavior, such as what we saw with George Floyd?
So I think to take the first question, what can parents tell their children to do when they're dealing with police?
Yes.
I think the simple ask from any police department is that if officers give instructions and officers give direction, that is followed. I say that, however, recognizing that there has to be the trust within the community that the officer is giving lawful direction, that the officer is giving, and that the officer is not getting ready to violate someone's rights or use excessive force or do something that's a violation. There's a basic precept of all professional law enforcement, which is that the authority of the police derives from the consent of the community, right? We do not police by might. There's times when force needs to be used, but we police by consent of the community. And that's really where our authority derives from. So again, we would just ask that, you follow the direction, again, recognizing that there has to be a trust there, that the direction is for lawful purpose and that there's good intent there. I know I see Dorian shaking his head a bit. I know this is something that he has talked about many times in his youth groups and throughout the community. So I don't know if he wants to touch on that at all.
I do. And I understand the community and our community that, well, what if he's telling me or she's telling me to do something wrong, quote unquote wrong? If we're honest, most of us do not know the law well enough to know whether it's wrong or not. We might not like it. There's a lot of things that are legal that you just don't like. And so I tell all of my young people that I mentor, do what the police tell you to do. If it's wrong, we can address it in court, and someone over them, the judge, is going to tell them they were wrong. But if you argue and fight and wrestle and all of that on the street, that is just not the place to do it, because the issue becomes, we as attorneys and judges will argue a point for months and sometimes years to figure out whether it was right or not. So how can you, as a civilian or even as a police officer, argue right then, right or wrong? On the street, we have to give authority to the police officer. Let them do what they do. Let's all go home safely. Even unfortunately, if you have to get arrested, and immediately we start to handle that in court. That's why now the courts are requiring, such a quick response to arrests, that we've gotten rid of much of the going straight to jail. You get arrested and they let you go in most cases. However, if you get taken to the county jail, you're going to be seen within 24 hours, so that a judge can say you're there because you're supposed to be, or you're not supposed to be there. I'm going to let you go. But on the street is not the place to argue whether this officer has the right to pat you down, question you, get you out of your car, or anything else. You deal with that later. You give an attorney a call immediately, or have your family call immediately. Lieutenant didn't answer this one yet, but the second part of the question was civilians watching and how much you should get involved. I'm going to ask you to not get involved. If you want, like the person did in the George Floyd, video it, stay back, allow the officers to maintain control of the situation, because what you don't want to do is find yourself also in that situation. And then you're going to be charged with obstruction or some other charge when a police officer is trying to do their job. That's just my input. Someone else might have a different take on it.
And I'll just add a couple of points to what Dorian just said. And that's, as I said in my opening, I could not imagine what it must have felt like as those bystanders on that sidewalk watching what happened to George Floyd. I can't, in my heart of hearts, imagine the pain that is resting on those folks' hearts and their souls. And it's a terribly problematic situation, because police are very much trained that if we're taking someone into custody, or if we're doing business, that we're going to protect our perimeter in order to make sure that there's not interference with what we're doing. Again, however, that's premised upon the trust that what is occurring is lawful. I think on the spot, the only recommendation I can make is it is lawful to videotape us. You know, we've got cameras on as well. But additionally is to dial 911. Is potentially, if there's only a couple officers there, maybe dialing 911 will signal to the supervisor or additional officers that maybe what's going on here is not appropriate, and then additional officers can show up. Again, I speak from the benefit of having an agency that we've never had to confront a situation like that. That we've again, our men and women day in and day out do the job. While we're certainly not perfect, but they do the job with justice and fairness in mind. And so we haven't had to cross that bridge. But you know, it even goes to another point about our policy and our training is that looking at our policies right now, there's always been an implied duty to intervene if an officer saw another officer using excessive force. It's been implied. It's been addressed through training and through practice. But it's something that we looked at our policy, and our policy was silent on that. So it's something that we're changing right now. And I would hope that if an officer saw another officer exceeding his or her authority and applying force illegally and excessively, that one of the officers would then step in.
Thank you. So there's a question. I know we're running short on time, but we have a question for the students. And the question is, what do you want the schools and the community to do better as far as addressing this issue?
I think, oh, my computer died again, but I think the best way to address it is to just put more education toward Black history into American history, because that is what American history is. It is Black history. And that has to be incorporated inside of our school systems, inside of our education systems. And it needs to be taught as we're grown up. Like, we learn about the Holocaust repeatedly, and we learn about all of these events, but I've learned more about my Black history in the past 2 weeks than I have in my entire school life, right? So it just has to be implemented inside of the school system.
Liz, I have a response to that from Jasmia.
Okay.
She said, I feel like it would be really helpful if the school would better their history courses. There isn't enough African Americans as there are white Americans. The history given about Black people is mainly on slavery, the Civil Rights Act, and a little bit of Martin Luther King. These are great things to talk about, but there are other key points like the mass incarceration after the Civil Rights Act, the Black Panther movement, the Central Park Five, and so on. Stuff like this is so important to teach us because it gives ones who have different ethnicities some insight on why the movement of Black Lives Matter is so important. Teaching children and teens about this kind of history will also help create a better future for us. When we grow up, we will all be united because of the history taught in class, which will give us the ability to understand each other's backgrounds. I'm so impressed with these students. And I just want to add to what Jasmia said, that she's speaking to this thing about sort of reckoning with the past. And in other countries where there's been significant historical traumas like the Holocaust and other things, it's taught in their history classes so that they don't repeat it again. So it's a never forget, which is why you still have some monuments that stand as a result of that, because they don't want them to forget so that they don't repeat those mistakes of the past. And we just haven't gotten there yet with our schooling. We need to really make sure that the texts that we're receiving and the things we're teaching our kids, we have to reckon with the history. We can't continue to water it down because it's comfortable. History is often ugly and filled with mistakes, but the whole point is to learn from them. And so I stand with Jayla and Jasmia's statements on that. And I know that'll be some things that you'll be sharing in other future conversations and things like that, but just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Does anybody want to speak to that question? Anything else on that?
Just very, very briefly, I would say one of the actionable ways for members of the community to make sure that happens, right, to get racial equity inside of the textbook, is to push publishers to do that. That's very hard because that's a larger money trail. It's a larger network of influence, one that I don't have the ability to do. but collaboratively, the parents of the school district, making sure that you guys are having these conversations with the school board to make sure that the State Department of Education is hearing this mantra loud and clear, that racial equity in the textbooks is necessary, so that way the true American history is painted. I think about Native Americans and First People groups that are largely left out of our textbooks, and other segregated people groups. It's a necessity, but parents, you guys are the ones that can move that mountain. It'll be very hard for us internally to turn those cogs. I think it's easier if the parents push upwards.
Well, I agree and somewhat disagree. I agree that this has to happen. As far as Matt was saying, as far as parents need to get involved, definitely, I believe parents need to get involved. However, the school system now especially has a responsibility. And I don't think that it is a textbook issue. There are plenty of books out there. And as any other school system, as they're preparing their curriculum, go out there and find books to do whatever they want to teach. It's the school system's responsibility now to go out there and find some books. I can give you a list of almost 100 books that you can start to introduce into your everyday curriculum. So there are books out there. They might not be in the textbook that you're currently using, but what we're finding is that now more than ever, all of us have to rethink what we've been using, what we've been doing. We have to rethink it. We have to revision it and come up with a new way. So I am putting that squarely on the school system to do it. Don't wait for the parents. The parents need to get involved and make sure that it is happening, but we cannot sit back and wait and say, well, the parents didn't say anything, so we didn't make it happen. It is up to us as educators to do that. And there are plenty of books out there, movies, videos. There's so much out there right now to do it. And I agree with Jayla. I've learned more about, and I'm 50 years old, I've learned more about Black history in the last 3 to 4 months than I've known my entire life. And I'm embarrassed to say that, but much of it came from my own education. I was in college before I heard of Juneteenth. I think our president just mentioned he made it famous a couple weeks ago. But to some degree, the argument that rose up because of his rally on Juneteenth did somewhat put it in the minds of people who had never heard of it. So, I mean, it shouldn't be something that we just learned today in 2020 when this happened, well over 100 years ago. So I'm not going as far as Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman says he believes that there should be no Black History Month. He wants to get rid of the Black History Month and just make Black history a part of total American history. I agree with the back end of that we should incorporate Black history into American history, because it's American history. And we need to see it on every week, just like we see all the rest of our country's history. But the responsibility is somewhat parents, but more so certainly our educators who are slated to teach our children how to move forward.
So I realize there's a lot of discussions going on in the chat, and I want to be cognizant and stick to our time frame of 90 minutes. Like I said in the beginning, this is a marathon. We are going to hold more forums like this, but I want to give each of our panelists just a few seconds to just sort of give us a summary of how you're feeling about the discussions that we're having now, and what's your hope for the future with this?
I can start. So thank you again for having me tonight. I am a very proud member of the community here. I didn't mention this before, but I was raised in Wellingborough, and now I'm raising my family in Township. So this entire area is just a part of my heart, and I will continue to, do what I can in my neck of the woods to do to make some change. So thank you for having me. I'm grateful for these students. I'm grateful to have members representing our community and the police department here. I don't know if people understand how important that is that we have the police department on this conversation. So this is really a community endeavor. And Liz and Katina, I just really am so grateful that you all pulled this together. And again, I just ask people to just continue to walk this marathon with you. Let's do it together. And it may not feel like we ended tonight with a nice tie and a bow and we answered every question and addressed every issue. But this is going to be a walk uphill. So we're going to get there if we continue to walk together. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kelly, for participating tonight.
I'd also just like to say thank you for having me, allowing me to be a part. Burlington Township is in my blood. I am at least second generation there. Mother and father still live there. Cousins, aunts, uncles graduated there, 88. I'm still a part of the system. I'm a public defender in Burlington Township Municipal Court. So this is good for us. I'm so glad that we are starting this conversation. I'm totally elated that we have these young people like Jayla and her friends that are continuing the conversation and not just passionate or upset, but passionate enough to start doing something. Because passion without activity is useless. So you need to have some activity behind your passion. And I clap to you, take my hat off to you, and just let you know if there's ever anything that I can do, either as a person, as an attorney, or as a pastor of the church, you get in touch with me and let me know, and I'll be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorian. We appreciate you. Once a Falcon, always a Falcon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invite. We're all very proud to be part of this panel. Hopefully next time we'll be able to stay the full time and all be together. But it's just really important that we're all part of this conversation and we're going to change the future. And that's what this conversation is all about. So
Jayla, and it's my goal to try to get the three of you together because we are going to be hosting another one of these in July, that we can get the three of you together because the three of you are just phenomenal young ladies and we are just so proud of you. You're just outstanding.
Really quick, Bible verse for me, James 3:18 says, "Those who plant the seeds of peace will reap a harvest of justice." So if it's justice that we're looking for, and all of us really are, we're looking for justice, we got to be peaceful about it. Obviously, there's differentiating opinions on that, but continue the work of peace and unity. Don't stop. Don't stop because you have opposition, but continue in peace and watch as justice flows from that. So God bless you guys again. Liz, thank you for helping orchestrate this. And then to the students, girls, you guys are amazing. You amaze me every day. I see the work that you're doing. To all the other panelists, thank you for participating in this. And to the community, thank you guys so much for joining on. I'm around all the time. So if you need me, just talk to anybody around here. Just ask where Matt is at. So God bless you guys.
Matt, thank you for participating and saying yes when I made the call. Much appreciated.
Got it.
Matt answers to this bat in the sky thing. If you put, never mind.
It's true. The Matt signal. We're installing that, right, LT?
Yes, we're putting it up on the roof now as we speak, actually. So if I may, first and foremost, to the three young ladies, every ounce of praise that you have received over the last several weeks is well deserved. Again, having witnessed what you were able to put together, and the courage, and again, the ability to actually bring it together, it's nothing less than commendable. And I'm very hopeful for you three, as well as the Burlington Township community at large as we move forward. And thank you to the school for putting this together, and all the fellow panelists. Just speaking for the police department, again, we are very proud of our men and women. We don't believe we're perfect, We don't believe we're without, fault and ills at times. But by and large, our men and women are good men and women that seek to improve the community. And I think that's a reflection of the community as well. It's not the police department and the community, it's the police department with the community. So again, to the extent that I can encourage anybody that wants to engage with us, reach out to us. We will also be reaching out to folks as well and moving forward in the future, and can't wait to see what the next panel may be. But again, I think it's a collective commitment to not just do better in words, but do better in deed.
Thank you very much. Katina?
I actually was just sitting here thinking how grateful I am to be part of this new family. I'm new to the district, but it's really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's good to see that everybody's so involved and so supportive, and the young ladies are just amazing. And I can't wait to see them next year and see all the things that they're going to do. And I hope they realize how much support they have moving forward. So I just want to thank you all for bringing me here, and I truly appreciate it. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think there is a great group of people to get moving on it. So thank you.
So I have to say, I'm going to call Katina out in a good way right now. We talk when doing the work of diversity and equity and inclusion, you use the term ally and advocate. And I can say that Katina has been both. She approached me a few weeks ago and said, Liz, I don't know what to do, but I feel like I have to do something. And what can I do? And my response to her was, slow down. Just made the first step in just coming to me and saying, I want to do something. And that's what this is all about. Katina and I, she has agreed to work with me as a co-facilitator for the district's equity team, which is something that actually started about 18 years ago in the district. And unfortunately, due to state cuts, it sort of went partially away. And I'm excited that the district is supporting the revitalization of our equity team. And I'm very excited that we're going to be able to work with our entire community, our faith-based partners, our police department, in providing more programs like this. I've enjoyed the conversations, enjoyed what I've been hearing. The other thing I want to announce to our community is that we're going to be putting together a website that will have different resources for you, books that you can read, YouTube videos that you can watch that we have gone through ourselves. So our goal is to provide as many resources and educate, and again, provide a forum where we can all get together and talk. I just want to thank everybody for joining us on this journey. I want to give a huge thank you to all of our panelists. You were phenomenal, and I reserve the right to call you back again because there's so many different conversations that we're going to have. Remember, it's a marathon. I do want to let all of our participants know that you'll be getting an email tomorrow from Kimberly Hayes. That's going to be a survey. And in that survey, I want your input in terms of what other types of sessions. We have things mapped out in terms of different topics, but we want to hear from you. Information that we can pass on to the police, because the police department too will be pulling together forums such as this. So the more input you give us, the better we can serve you as a community. So I do just want to give all of you homework. Yes, I said homework. In preparation for the next step. And I want you to pay attention to your feelings. Think about the conversations that you heard tonight. Come in contact with your emotions and just journal about what it is, how you're feeling. And try to have a difficult conversation with someone who does not look like you, and step outside of your comfort zone. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for participating. I want to thank all of our participants and thank our panelists again. You have all been wonderful. And again, it's a marathon, and I'm looking forward to all of the good work that's going to come out of this. So I wish all of you well. We will be doing another session in July, so keep your eye out on our Facebook page. And those of you who get the Falcon Flyer, we will be announcing the next panel that's going to happen. So again, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening and be well and stay safe. Thank you.
So long. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.